Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lauren and today we're going to talk about the very basics of astrology. Now I know there are a lot of astrology people out there, especially on YouTube, and I am definitely not all-knowing. However, I'm a psychic development coach, and here I like to teach people how to use their intuition, their psychic abilities. And so on my channel I have a lot of how-to videos, and so if you want to incorporate astrology into your readings, this is the video for that. Now, most of my knowledge comes from Yasmin Boland's book. It's a very introductory, easy read. You can probably, I think I read it in like a night, or maybe like a weekend. I highly recommend it if you want to have like your own physical copy. It goes way into depth, but I have been using astrology probably for the last 4 years and I love it. I've found it to just be like super spot on, not only with like telling like what people are and who they will be, but just also in a predictive way of how to use it to predict what's coming up. So yeah, a lot of this video is also based on my own experiences with it, and you will find with astrology that learning and incorporating your experiences as you go is going to be the best way to help you just remember the information and utilize it so that you can use it in a predictive way. Or I hope this video is helpful for those of you who have always wanted to learn astrology, but you don't want to jump in the rabbit hole and you don't know where to start. So hopefully this just gives you an introduction to it so you can just like understand what the heck people are talking about when you hear it. So astrology is the study of stars. And how they move, but it goes beyond astronomy in the sense of like, how does it affect life here on planet Earth? So astronomy is just kind of the study of those stars, how they move. That has been around for ages, and basically astrology has taken it to the next level of being like, when this planet is here and when that planet is here, we're just going to take notes on like what happens. And after so many years of this going on, so many years, basically people were able to kind of notice patterns and see like, hey, whenever this sign is here or whenever this planet is here, it seems like this thing always tends to happen. You probably heard of the infamous Mercury in retrograde. So when Mercury starts to appear like it's moving backwards in the sky, which is not, it's just like an illusion, a lot of people would notice that there was communication problems, technology problems, stuff like that. And so it kind of just was a pattern that people noticed, and using this we can infer about somebody's like personality, their life, as well as like what's coming up in the future. Also looking back in the past, there's a lot of cool articles out there of people basically looking at the stars during a certain huge pivotal time in, the history of our world, and being able to be like, wow, look at the Roman Empire falling and what the planets were like then and the similarities between that and, this time. And so basically astrology nowadays is used kind of for two main things. One is to look at your own birth chart. So when you were born, the stars, the planets, everything was in a certain spot at a certain time when you were born. And so basically that's called your birth chart. You can go to like all these websites, type in the date, time you were born, and it'll show you exactly where the planets were when you were, when you came into this world. And you can look at your birth chart and figure out things about yourself, about your personality, about things that you might struggle in, about career things that might be useful and helpful. And so first it's known natally. You're using it to understand your natal chart and who you are and your personality. And then the next part of it is like predictive astrology, looking into the future and saying, ooh, okay, this is about to happen. How can I plan and navigate around what's about to happen? Or maybe just like not plan and navigate as much as just be prepared and let things be out of your control, because that's what it feels like sometimes with astrology. So that second part, it really is predictive astrology, looking at right now, looking into the future so that you can kind of make plans. Now, when you jump into astrology, you're always going to hear about two different systems. There's the sidereal system and the tropical system. Most Westerners are using the tropical system and identify with that. A lot of, I would say, more advanced people go into learning about sidereal. A lot of people claim that sidereal is more specific and more accurate. I don't know enough about sidereal to say that or not. However, I do think it's important to understand tropical, which is what this video is going to be about, just because that's what most people use, and it's helpful to, have the same language as the majority of the people that have it. So if you're curious on the difference, the tropical zodiac is basically very like sun-based, and we look at the path that the sun is moving on in the sky and how the signs sit on that path, and that path is called the ecliptic, so the sun's ecliptic. Sidereal is basically like looking at the sun and then where it is proportionally to the different signs in the sky. So it's not on that ecliptic, it's like basically here I am and here's where the sun is and here's where this is, so it's a little bit more, I don't want to say mathematical because it's all kind of mathematical, but it's starting from a different like perspective. One system is choosing to look at it from this perspective and the other system is choosing to look at it from that perspective. So jumping into it, you need to know 3 major introductory things. These things are all going to be on your chart, and that is the planets, the houses, and the signs. These 3 things are going to be the main thing and the first thing that you look at when it comes to your chart and just honestly just understanding astrology in general. So the planets, we all know the planets, we went to school, we probably made the little dioramas of the little like styrofoam balls. We have planets in the sky, and what they are associated with is kind of like patterns of energy. And so usually when people talk about planets, they're kind of saying like, what's the energy like right now? Or what's the energy like when these planets are in these positions? And again, this comes from many years of observing patterns. Okay, whenever the sun is here, whenever the Pluto is here and it's in relation to this, like what was going on? So the great thing is there's a lot of people that have already taken these notes and they kind of have assigned meaning or patterns or like energy to the planets. So think about planets as what type of energy is coming through. Now there are inner planets, which is the sun, moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus. And yes, the moon is considered a planet in astrology just because it's kind of like up there affecting things. And those are the inner planets, and that's because they're moving very quickly. So when you think about the path that all these planets move on, the amount of time that it takes for them to go around their path, like the inner planets are a lot quicker at moving. Whereas Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, those are all further away, and it takes them a lot longer to go along their paths. And really the only thing you need to know about this is that well, there's a lot of things to know about that, but at a basic level, you'll find lots of people being born when Pluto was in a certain sign. So you'll have like a whole generation who shares Pluto being kind of in the same sign. And so it kind of informs like a generation and like what their personality is like. Whereas your sun sign, which you are probably most familiar with, that changes month by month because your sun sign is like, what zodiac were you born in? Are you an Aquarius? Are you a Pisces? Are you a Virgo? And so the sun is constantly like moving every month. The moon is moving even quicker, right? So you're going to have a lot more variation in your chart with those inner planets than versus the outer planets. So like if you're looking at like me and my siblings, we're going to have those outer planets be very similar, assuming you're born close to like when your siblings were born. Just remember, inner planets, outer planets, those outer planets move a lot slower. So I'm overcomplicating it already. Now, when you look at your birth chart, everyone is going to have all the planets in their birth chart. They're just going to be in different positions. The planets didn't just like fall off the map when you were born. So the sun, the moon, Mercury, it's all going to be in a certain like position in your birth chart. So if we're talking about the sun being in, your 6th house or in this zodiac, it's saying what energy is going to flavor that area of your life, basically. And we'll get into like that. I'm just trying to give you context here. So I'm going to go through each planet and their overall energy as quickly as I can. I'm also going to put up in a graphic like negatives and positives of this planet, because this planet can express energy, but it's not always positive. It can be like a negative expression. Now, each of these planets also have a little symbol that is identified with them, so that when you look at your chart, it's easy to find. So that will also be up in the graphic. So the planet, the sun, this is going to be about ego, where you shine, how you kind of portray yourself outwards. So when you're looking at the sun in your chart, it's going to talk about like your confidence, what you're here to do, your driving force, what your focus is in this lifetime. It's where you shine and like what your central concerns are. So I'm just going to use myself as an example throughout this video. My sun is in Pisces. That means like when you look at my chart, the placement of the sun is going to be in Pisces. That's my sun sign. So like when you think about like what's my astrology sign, most people know their sun sign. So that means my ego, my driving force is going to be flavored by Pisces and what Pisces is about. And like very much so I identify with that. Pisces is like the psychic, the mystic. I did not, like, side note, I never thought I would be in this industry. I went to school for something else, and then of course I just landed here. And I think with my birth chart, it was like it was a matter of time. I was gonna land here no matter what. Anyways. Now your moon sign, this is where you feel your emotions, where you repress your emotions. It's your inner nature, it's your house, your home, your hearth. It's how you grew up, it's your unconscious, it's the shadow side, it's the work that you need to do. It's about being receptive, sensitive, also like in regards to like your fertility. Overall, I would just kind of say it's like your emotional state, your security, subconscious. It's kind of like that side of yourself. So again, my moon is in Scorpio. So that means the way I feel, the way I repress my emotions, I'm going to do it in a very Scorpio-like manner. Mercury is where you talk and communicate and express yourself. Also, it can be like where you gossip and where you get into like negative communication or like arguments or conflicts. So overall, Mercury is kind of about like communication, talking, writing. It's how you express yourself. It's also like encompassing like transportation, like how you get from A to B. That's why they always say like don't travel during Mercury retrograde. It's your ability to be like a smooth talker, a thinker. It's your thirst for knowledge and communication. Now Venus and Mars are kind of like a little bit of a duo. They play together. Venus being the more feminine side, Mars being the more masculine side, but Venus in your chart is going to tell you how you love, how you relate to other people, how you love yourself. It's also like where you're a little bit vain, maybe a little bit lazy, or maybe just not very caring towards others. So Venus dictates romances, riches, how you fall in love, kind of like the finer things, more like luxuries, little things like that, or big things, I guess. Beauty, luxury, wealth, divine feminine, think Venus. That makes a lot of sense, I think, if you know kind of the origins of Venus. Now Mars is like very like action, like it's like where you take action towards your dreams. It's like what drives you, what motivates you, what kicks your butt in the morning. And on the more negative side, it's like where you can like not feel motivated, where you can kind of crash and burn, where you can be destructive and maybe like sabotage yourself. So Mars, determination, drive, the fuel in your rocket, as Yasmin puts it. It's also about sex, aggression, anger, what you chase, again, masculinity. It can also be like how you argue with other people, kind of that more fiery Mars energy. Jupiter is like where you are happy, you are full of faith. Jupiter is like good luck. Whenever Jupiter is doing something good, I'm always excited because it's just associated with like good things coming in, good karma, good luck. It can also be like where you're a little too overconfident. It's like a good amplifier in like wherever it's at. It's your joy, your freedom, your sense of adventure. It's where you have fun and where you find your faith. But it can also be like, again, a little like arrogant. Saturn is kind of like the hardworking, I've heard it described as kind of like the daddy that like tells you what to do and really like gets in and like teaches you the hard lessons that you don't always want to learn. So it can be like where you yourself are like hardworking and strategic, but it can also be like where you slack and where you like make excuses and where you like refuse to learn lessons. So Saturn is the taskmaster. Saturn gives you the reality check, again, lessons that you need to learn. Saturn is about structure, work, career. It's about wisdom and like the understanding like you reap what you sow. It can also be like what limits you or like what depresses you. Uranus is fun. It's where you dare to be different. And again, we're getting into those outer planets. So you'll find like, again, a lot of like a generation having Uranus in the same spot, which means, you know, they all dare to be different in this specific way. But it's also where you can be like a loose cannon. I really like how Yasmin described that. Uranus is where you innovate. It's where you dare to make changes. It's about freedom, sudden reversals. It's where you get like lightning bolts out of the blue. It's like when you look at history and think of moments where big change happen, anarchy, but also like modern things are pushed into reality. Neptune is where you are inspired, like what inspires you. Neptune is also like where you can be like confused and maybe like a little too idealistic, like head in the clouds. So Neptune rules dreams, kind of the more mystic side of ourselves. It's where you romanticize life. It's where your association with the divine, spiritual natures are. That can also govern like drugs and alcohol. Again, like where you get into like addiction or like a reliance on like a reality that you want to happen, but it doesn't work. And again, head in the clouds kind of energy. I'm very familiar with this one because Neptune rules Pisces. It's escapism. That's the word that I'm looking for. It's like the denial of reality. That's kind of like the more negative side of Neptune. But it's also like where you're a visionary, where you're an artist, like where you get like downloads from spirit and kind of like communicate that into this world. It's how you inspire others, but also like it's where you can get confused as well. So for example, just with me being Pisces, right? I'm ruled by Neptune. Every sign, every sun sign has like a planet that rules that sun sign. So you're going to be very familiar with like that energy. Again, like what inspires me is divine stuff. It's spirituality. And here I am like sharing it with the world. That's my sun sign, but that's also like a little bit of Neptune. It's what inspires me and what I choose to inspire others about. And lastly, we have Pluto. And yes, in astrology, Pluto is considered a planet still. Pluto is about like destruction. It's about where you can transform anything in your life. So that can be a good thing and a bad thing. And Pluto is literally like, it's Hades. It's the lord of the underworld. That is his name, the same guy. So think transition, birth, death. So that can be bad, but it can also be good. It can signal something new, but it can also be letting go of things that maybe we don't want to let go of. So Pluto often will come in to detox a lot of things, like the planet, a generation. The Tower card is associated with Pluto in the tarot. It's where you can change the world. It's where you can become obsessed and a little like power hungry. It's also just like where you're in control and where you're not in control. So those are the planets. Hopefully you've kind of taken some notes, but don't be too intimidated by it at first. I think really you have to kind of learn to understand it as you go. And again, as like a transit happens and everyone's talking about it, you can kind of pay attention and you learn a little bit over time. It's a lot to learn at once and a lot to memorize. And again, your personal experience with each of these planets is going to be different. So that's why I think astrology is something you have to observe for like a couple years. Like I've been doing it probably for 4 years now before I've even like started talking about it here on my channel. Just so that I can understand and again, like see what planets do and how they affect me and how they affect us like globally. And it's the global stuff that just like blows my mind, really. Now, the second thing you want to be aware of are the houses in astrology. And the houses are basically like, what area of your life are we talking about? Each house represents like a different experience in your life. And we start very like central ego, like who you are, how you define yourself. And then it goes into, as the houses like go up in number, it's like being more outward and how you experience things in relation to everyone else. We start with ourselves and then we expand outwards, and it kind of tells a story with like the last house being death and rebirth, and kind of like repeating this cycle. And then you're back to, you know, the ego in the first house and being born again. And so basically it talks about like, okay, when this planet is here, what house is it in? Where does that show up in your life? And really this is dictated off of like the signs. So like you're going to have the second house in a certain sign, or the third house in a certain sign. You have all the houses. It's kind of like the inner wheel of your chart. And then depending on what planets fall in there, again, it sounds a little complicated at first, but once you get the hang of it, and again, the vernacular, the verbiage, the words out of the way, then you can start to understand and read your chart. So again, everyone has all 12 houses, but it's more like what is in that house, which sign is in that house for you, which planets are in that house. And then that's where you kind of infer bigger conclusions. So your first house, this is going to be about your appearance, like how you put yourself out to the world, how you mask, basically how you're seen even if you don't like it. Second house, cash, property, possessions. You know, it's the abundance or the lack of. You know, that house is going to talk about cash, money, all of that stuff in your life. Or it can just be about like what you value, what gives you self-esteem. Third house is going to be about communication, siblings, neighbors. The third house is also about like trips and transportation. Fourth house is your home, your family, who you live with. It might not be your literal family, but the people that are like under the same house as you. It also includes like your past family. Ultimately, it's like where you feel like you belong, kind of your emotional state. Fifth house is romance, creativity, children, pregnancy, flirting, sex. It's kind of that creative, I would say like your sacral chakra is like what I associate it with. It's also where you have fun. Sixth house, I'm all too familiar with. This is work, routines, health. It also governs your job. It's kind of like your day-to-day, what you got to do, whether you're good at keeping motivated at that. Seventh house, partnerships, relationships, marriage, alliances. It's not always romantic. It can be like work stuff. It's basically just like where you have relationships with other people. So in a more negative sense, that can also include like enemies, people you don't get along with. Eighth house, taboo topics. It can also be like the occult, sex. It also is taxes, like joint finances, anything mysterious. It's also kind of about rebirth. Again, you'll see like there's a little bit of like crossover in some of these houses. So it's really like, again, pay attention to like what it does when it comes up for you and like what it looks like in your personal chart, because it's going to kind of change like how you view that house. But overall, these are kind of like what it's about. Ninth house is about travel. It's about studying, broadening your mind, being open to like adventure, new ideas. It's about like expanding, it's about opening up, it's about your perspective. It also includes like legal matters. I feel like there's like occasional things that it's like, oh, and this, and it's just like, what? I still haven't quite figured out how it fits in, but 10th house is your career. It's like your ambitions, your career, your job. It's how you make your mark and how you're recognized. So it's like maybe more so like what you're doing, whereas like when I mentioned job in the 6th house, that's like more of like your motivation to get up and do the job and like, again, routines. Whereas again, 10th house talks more about like where you would be good at like making your mark in the world. 11th house is social circles, social networks. It can be the internet, friends, where you have like wishes or aspirations. And the 12th house is your house of like spirituality, it's dreams, it's death, it's rebirth. It can also be about like where you sabotage yourself, where you transcend, also your fears. Now, if you notice, some of these keywords kind of came up, And again, that's because a lot of this is mirrored in the planets, and it's going to be mirrored in the signs. So for example, each of these houses is associated with a certain sign. So the sixth house that I keep talking about, that's the house of Virgo. So it can complicate things, but it'll also help you memorize. So when you think of, 12th house, what's the 12th zodiac? That's Pisces. Okay, Pisces is about this. That's also what the house is about. And so you're probably like, okay, well, why do we need both of those things? And that's because depending on when you were born, your houses might not align up exactly perfectly with the signs in the zodiac. Unless you are an Aries and you were born at the very start of the astrological year, then yes, those are absolutely going to line up and it's going to make it super easy for you. But for most of us, we have to look at our chart, and the signs and the houses do not line up exactly. Now, there is more information on the houses and the quadrants and stuff like that. We're going to get into that in the next video. Again, I just want to give you the terminology. Now we are into the signs, and the signs is, again, it's that imaginary band that the sun is moving across. It's the ecliptic, and it's divided into just 12 imaginary sections, and they gave each of these quadrants a sign, and that, again, has influenced a lot. And the signs are probably what you know most about, the zodiac signs, your sun sign. And think of the signs as like how that energy is put on display. So we talked about the planets. The planets are what that energy is. The houses are like where it's showing up in your life. And the signs are like how it's showing up. And I'm going to get into putting all three of these together. So we cycle through all 12 of these signs in 1 year. So you'll see all the time, oh, it's Pisces season, oh, it's Aries season, blah, blah, blah. And it always lasts about a month. And there's 12 months of the year, 12 signs. Overarching, each of these signs is associated with an element. So they're either going to be earth, air, fire, water, and each of them have 3 qualities. Either they are cardinal, mutable, or fixed. I don't think you need to really know a whole lot about that getting into it, but just keep it in the back of your mind. There's more information to learn there when you feel like you can get there. And again, each one of them has a ruling planet. Now, again, you will have all 12 signs in your chart because those little sections, that invisible like band in the sky, didn't disappear the day you were born. So you will be able to find Pisces, Virgo in your chart. It's more again about like what house is it in, and then what planets are there or not there. So the first is Aries. Aries is the first sign in the zodiac. The Aries is the sign of the warrior. So they're very fierce, determined, they're go-getters, they're competitors, they're fighters. Again, all of these are going to be generic. I know a ton of people will fight me on these. I'm just kind of going by book definition. You probably have a very specific idea of what some of these signs are based on the people that you've met. Taurus is the bull. They can be very stubborn, but they're also very like sensible, dependable. They're grounded. They're very much in nature, music. I would say the Tauruses that I know are very much about like luxury as well, and like that sensual luxury, kind of taking care of themselves. Gemini are the twins. They're also like the communicators of the zodiac. Keywords to describe them would be like observers, communicators, curiosity, intelligence. Sometimes they're a little bit hard to pin down because they're so airy. Cancers are described as being very emotional, which is kind of like a stereotype, but they are the nurturers, the mothers. They're about feeling, they're about the house, the home. So again, the 4th house is associated with Cancer. So anything that I talked about with the 4th house would also like describe somebody who has a lot of like Cancer energy. They're kind, they're compassionate, and they're protective. Leos are the performers. I have a lot of Leos in my life. They're dramatic, they're charismatic, they're outgoing. They want to be seen. They can be a little overly like showy for sure. They can be prideful. They are the lion. Virgos. I'm a Virgo rising, which I will explain in a minute. Virgos are very critical. They are very routine oriented. They are very organized. They analyze. They're the perfectionist. They're also very loyal, practical, and dependable people. Very grounded. Like if you ask a Virgo to get something done, they will do it. Libra is the peacemaker. I think they're very relationship oriented. They are about harmony, balance, peace. Again, I find personal experience, a lot of Libras really need to be like in a relationship to feel that balance. They can be very diplomatic and good to the other people in their life, good lovers, good friends. Scorpios are very deep feeling. That Scorpios also again associated with like the occult. They can be very intense, deep thinkers, feelers, very introspective. I think Scorpios also like related to like sex, mystery. Sagittarius is kind of like the big thinkers, big perspective, very adventurous. They are very philosophical as well. They like to seek out new information. Again, this is in your chart. So this is like where you seek out information, where you feel like you can travel and where you want to expand and grow as a person. Sagittarius is your more optimistic side. I would say like that's the key word for Sagittarius is like they're the optimist and they are the big picture thinkers. Capricorns, I have way too many of you in my life. Capricorns are very long-term goal oriented. They will get things done. They are like the career-oriented person, but it's not always career because they don't always like want to be in a career. It's more about like, again, long-term vision, legacy. They have to know the plan 5 years out and they will execute it. They have that vision for the future and the determination and like the follow through to get it done. The downside to Capricorns, they're more hermits because again, they can become so laser focused on that they forget to like engage in other areas of their life. So very disciplined, very independent. My daughter is a Capricorn. That was not planned. I tried to make her a Pisces or an Aquarius, and I got another Capricorn. And just thinking about all the Capricorns in my family, they are all entrepreneurs. They all are very focused on their like long-term vision and goals. Aquarius, you think is a water sign, is not. It's actually an air sign. They can also be hard to pin down, very much in their thoughts. They're like the innovators, the visionaries. They see things in a very different way. They think about freedom, truth, revolution, anarchy. Again, Uranus is their ruling planet. So think about all those same keywords about coming in and wanting to like change things up. Develop new technologies, things like that. Pisces are the most psychic. They are the dreamers, head in the clouds. They can become more prone to addictions because again, they're living in a reality that might not be the one that is actually here right now. They're the dreamers, the mystics, the oracles. They're very connected to their intuition and the divine. Basically, Pisces in your chart is going to show where you are spiritual and intuitive. So those are all 12 signs. Again, those are going to be in your chart. It's more about like what house is in that sign and what planet is in that sign. So the last thing I think is pertinent introductory level information is knowing about your sun, moon, and your rising sign. So most people who are not even exposed to astrology, they still know their sun sign. And again, that's as simple as just looking up your birth date because then it's really easy to know where the sun was. And you are usually going out there saying, I'm a Pisces, I'm a this, I'm a that. And you kind of identify based off that one sign. A lot of people don't identify with that. And I think that's because they don't know the full picture. Knowing the full picture is knowing where all the signs are and all the planets are, and that's like truly understanding your full birth chart will give you the most information about yourself. However, I think the next step beyond just knowing your sun sign is to know your big three, is what they call it. Your sun, your moon, and your rising. And what that means is basically where was the sun when you were born, where was the moon when you were born, like what sign it was in. Again, like where that planet was on that invisible band, what section was it in, and then your rising. And your rising is kind of like where your birth chart starts. It determines where your houses are in your chart. It determines like where your signs are. Again, next video, but you can put your birth date. You have to know the time and the location of where you were born. Put it into a birth chart calculator and it'll tell you, it'll give you your whole entire birth chart, but you can look at it and you want to look for your sun, your moon, and Sometimes it says rising, most often it says ASC, your ascendant. And then you can get a lot clearer snapshot of your personality. And here's why. Because your sun sign is usually just kind of how you outwardly express yourself. Again, think of the planet and those keywords that we talked about. Again, my sun is in Pisces, so my core is very much like psychic, woo-woo. I'm very much that dreamer. I have a very unrealistic view of reality sometimes. I'm often head in the clouds. It explains my Disney adulting. I very much want to live in La La Land sometimes. Your moon is going to describe how you feel, okay? And that's important to know because how you feel, how you process emotions, that looks different between everybody. And that is a huge part of your personality. So my moon is in Scorpio. So my moon is very like deep thinker. I often don't share my emotions. It's very like closeted, but when I feel my emotions, I feel them very deeply, and I approach them from a very like, I would say again, like mysticism perspective, which is Scorpio. But I can be a little too tight with my emotions and not let a lot of people in as well. And so that just told you a lot about me just from my moon sign. So you're going to want to look at your moon sign and where it's at to kind of show you how you feel those emotions. So again, go back to like the moon and how the moon is explained, then go into the sign that that's in and how that sign is explained, and you're going to learn a lot about yourself. Okay, and then your rising, your ascendant, this is how other people perceive you. So this is how you act outwardly. So in relation to like the sun is like who you are at your core, but you might not always like be that person outwardly to other people. So I feel like I'm just like the perfect example for this because I'm a Pisces sun, but I'm a Virgo rising. So Virgo, again, very analytical, very organized, teacher, like basically what I do on this channel. And so I think you guys probably get the more analytical, organized teacher version of me. But, you know, when I walk away from the camera, when I walk away from this side of it, I am that more intuitive dreamer, like in touch with that intuition. So your rising is how you're perceived. I was always perceived as very bossy, very organized, very like I'm a perfectionist, I'm going to analyze it, do it my way. And so again, I think that's that Virgo rising that's being perceived by other people. And that's absolutely part of me as well. It's not that that's like not me. But the rising is kind of like the mask that you put on to the outside world. So you might not always show that inner core, that sun sign. But those big three really kind of inform who you are as a person. So like people use this also to quickly identify other people. And they're like, what's your big three? Like, what's your sun, moon, and rising? And then you can kind of instantly get a snapshot of what someone is like. So this is why I say if you're getting into a relationship or you want to know more about your family, like know their big three, you're going to understand a lot more about them. So leave your big three in the comments down below and how you think those three come across together. So again, I'm Pisces sun, Scorpio moon, Virgo rising. Again, I think I'm very mystical, intuitive. It's just who I am and it's the interests that I have, but I give it in a very like analytical, teachy sort of way. But then I'm very like, my emotions I keep to myself, and I think it kind of comes off as like a hard ass sometimes. I only let in people that I trust, and that kind of gets me into trouble sometimes. So yeah, I'm curious, what's your big three? How do you interpret those? Leave it in the comments down below. And so wrapping this up, these three things, the planets, the houses, and the signs, it's a lot of information to take in and start with. And you're eventually going to use all of it to read a chart. And that, again, is going to be in my next video. But personally, I think where you should go from here is just trying to memorize the terms. Even if you have to memorize it from a book, and then let it kind of shift and change as you actually like listen, watch, and like work with the astrology as it's happening, or again, reading into your chart. Let it kind of morph and define into what you feel like that planet, that sign, that house is about. So my biggest piece of advice for memorizing these is actually to use Astro Dice. I've got some right behind me. Now, what I love about Astro Dice is there's 3 dice, one for the planets, one for the houses, one for the signs, and what you can do is just pick one, pick all 3, roll them, and quiz yourself. It's like flashcards for astrology. So this one is the houses. Here's the signs. So it's going to force you to learn the symbols, right? And the planets. So start by just like rolling these and learning the symbols and the names. And then I think you can start to roll all 3 and start talking and telling a story about how they affect each other. Honestly, I think doing this for a while before you even bother with the birth chart is probably most helpful, but I think most people aren't going to do that. But if you want to learn, I do have a whole video on Astro Dice and how to read these. Again, I kind of walk through all of this, but I also have like a PDF printout for the signs, for the houses, and for the planets. So honestly, even if you just go over there for the PDF to learn and to kind of alter the PDF, I think that's a great way to start memorizing these terms. And I will also link these Astro Dice down below. And beyond this, this is where you start to move into reading your birth chart, reading other people's birth charts, and looking at predictive astrology. Everyone is born at different times, different places. The planets are always constantly moving above us and changing like what's going on. So it's really fun to look at. And we're gonna discuss that all in my next video, which I will link down below when it comes out. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. I love talking about astrology. We do it a lot over on Patreon as well. We have live readings, we have psychic game nights. So if you ever have questions or want to practice with it over there, feel free to join us. It's just a monthly subscription. Patreon is a monthly subscription that you can cancel at any time. You're supporting me as a creator and you're getting content in return. The things you receive are dependent on the tier that you choose, which you can always upgrade or downgrade from. But basically, you're going to get early access to my videos. You can vote on upcoming content that you want to see. We also have a monthly psychic development Q&A where you can ask me any questions that you have. We also have a monthly psychic development game night where you can practice reading others live, real time. I also provide a monthly reading night on YouTube where I read all of my Patreon members. And you also get a monthly reading of the upcoming energy of that month and an individual card reading for every single member every month, as well as exclusive group chats, access to Patreon only videos, and all of my past content from many years. Your name might also appear in the credits of my videos. You can join Patreon anytime using the link in the description. All right, friends, I know that was a lot of information. I hope it was helpful, kind of organized things, brought you some clarity. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like, and I will see you in the next one. Alrighty, bye.